The flickering neon sign of a forgotten diner cast long, ephemeral shadows across Ilara's weary face. A veteran Mossad agent, her eyes, though hardened by countless missions, still held the ghost of a past failure. The memory of Operation Chimera, a botched intelligence op that cost innocent lives, clung to her like a shroud, fueling a relentless drive for redemption. Justice, for Ilara, wasn't merely a concept, it was a visceral, unyielding commitment etched into her very soul. She sought not just to apprehend, but to dismantle the architects of chaos, those who weaponized finance to sow terror. Her current quarry was one such architect, a phantom known only as the Architect. This elusive figure operated in the murky depths of global finance, a puppet master pulling strings of devastation from the shadows. His network, a sprawling, insidious web, stretched across continents, funneling illicit funds to extremist groups, turning abstract numbers into very real explosions, shattered families, and widespread despair. The images of children orphaned by a market bombing, funded by the architect's convoluted schemes, flashed through Ilara's mind, each frame a fresh wound, a renewed vow. The blood of the innocent, though unseen, stained the hands of this financial terrorist. The call came, as it always did, with an air of cold urgency. Her handler's voice, devoid of emotion, laid out the stakes. This wasn't merely another assignment. It was a deep dive into the heart of the architect's empire. Ilara was to infiltrate his inner circle, a feat demanding more than just physical prowess or tactical brilliance. It required a complete metamorphosis, a shedding of her identity, a rebirth into someone entirely new. The mission brief outlined a cover so elaborate, so meticulously crafted, it felt less like a disguise and more like an alternate life. She was to become a high-flying corporate executive, a persona utterly antithetical to the shadow warrior she had always been. A subtle detail in the intelligence dossier snagged Ilara's attention, a fleeting mention of a financial institution the architect had once targeted. This was no random attack. It was the very same institution where her younger sister had worked, a sister whose promising career had been cut short by a seemingly unrelated corporate collapse, now revealed to be a ripple effect of the architect's earliest machinations. The revelation hit Ilara with a cold, hard force, solidifying her resolve. This mission was no longer just about justice, it was personal. The path ahead was fraught with challenges. The ethical tightrope she would have to walk, the morally ambiguous decisions she would be forced to make, already weighed heavily on her. How much of herself would she lose in becoming Dr. Evelyn Reed, the ruthless executive? Could she maintain her core principles while operating in a world defined by greed and deception? The boundaries between right and wrong blurred, and Ilara knew that navigating this new landscape would demand an unprecedented level of mental fortitude. As she absorbed the final details of her new life, a secure message pinged on her encrypted device. It was from an unknown source within her own agency, a single line of text. "Watch your back. Not all shadows are outside the walls." A chill snaked down Ilara's spine. The mission, it seemed, harbored an unexpected obstacle, a potential betrayal from within the very organization she served. The game had just begun, and the stakes were far higher and far more complex than she had ever imagined. The cryptic warning echoed in Ilara's mind, a discordant note in the symphony of her meticulously constructed new identity. Yet there was no time for internal dissent or suspicion. The mission demanded unwavering focus. She plunged headfirst into the creation of Dr. Evelyn Reed, a persona designed to project an aura of brilliant, almost intimidating competence. Every gesture, every intonation, every sartorial choice was painstakingly crafted. Dr. Reed was not merely a disguise. She was a meticulously engineered weapon, forged in the crucible of Ilara's Mossad training. Her transformation was a grueling odyssey. Days blurred into weeks within a specialized facility, a sterile environment where psychologists and corporate strategists dissected her every move. She devoured financial reports, mastered complex algorithms, and absorbed corporate jargon until it became second nature. Etiquette lessons morphed into psychological warfare. where reading subtle cues and manipulating perceptions were paramount. Physical training shifted from combat readiness to projecting an effortless power, a graceful dominance in boardrooms and exclusive clubs. She learned to walk with an assured stride, to command attention with a glance, to speak with an authority that left no room for doubt. The process was exhausting, a constant battle against the ingrained reflexes of Alara the agent, forcing Dr. Reed to emerge. Sometimes, late at night, staring at her reflection, she barely recognized the woman looking back. The lines between who she was and who she pretended to be began to blur, a disquieting erosion of her true self. Armed with her new identity and an impeccable fabricated history, Dr. Evelyn Reed stormed the hallowed halls of Sterling Global Capital, a high-profile financial firm with whispers of illicit dealings and shadowy connections to the architect. Her arrival was met with a mixture of awe and thinly veiled resentment. She was an anomaly, a young, fiercely intelligent woman who ascended the corporate ladder with breathtaking speed, bypassing seasoned veterans. Her initial interactions were a masterclass in calculated assertiveness. She didn't just join meetings, she dominated them, dissecting complex financial models with surgical precision, offering insights that left even the most jaded executives speechless. She established herself not just as a player, but as a force to be reckoned with, her sharp intellect and unwavering confidence leaving little room for dissent. Among those who eyed her with particular suspicion was Julian Vance, a senior executive whose ambition rivaled her own. Julian was a shark in a tailored suit, a man who had clawed his way to the top and wasn't about to let an outsider, especially one as enigmatic as Dr. Reed, usurp his position. He watched her with a hawk's intensity, his keen analytical mind picking up on subtle discrepancies, small deviations from the expected corporate playbook. He saw the cold, calculating efficiency, but also a flicker of something deeper, something he couldn't quite place. Alara, as Dr. Reed, navigated the treacherous currents of corporate politics with the same precision she applied to a tactical operation. Every lunch meeting was an intelligence-gathering session, every casual conversation a reconnaissance mission. She deployed her Mossad skills, observation, deduction, psychological profiling, to manipulate alliances, sow discord, and extract information. Slowly, meticulously, she began to uncover a subtle pattern within Sterling Global's vast network of transactions. Seemingly innocuous transfers, disguised as legitimate business dealings, formed a delicate web leading to shell corporations and offshore accounts, a financial breadcrumb trail pointing directly towards the architect. Each discovery was a small victory, a step closer to her target, yet it came at a cost. The constant performance, the suppression of her true self, began to wear on her. There were moments, fleeting and disquieting, when she felt a profound sense of loss for the woman she used to be. The unburdened Alara who fought for justice without the heavy mask of Evelyn Reed. One evening, a near catastrophe unfolded. Julian Vance, driven by his growing suspicions, had discreetly accessed her personal files within the company's server. He found a subtle inconsistency in her academic records, a detail so minor, so easily overlooked, yet it was enough to unravel her. Alara, alerted by a silent alarm she had installed, found him just moments before he could download the incriminating evidence. Her heart pounded, a primal fear seizing her. With a chilling calm, Dr. Reed confronted him, her eyes like chips of ice. She spun a plausible, intricate lie about a clerical error, her voice laced with an authority that brooked no argument. Julian, caught off guard by her sudden appearance and the sheer force of her personality, hesitated, then retreated, convinced, for now, that his suspicions were unfounded. But the incident left Alara shaken, a stark reminder of the razor-thin ice upon which she skated. Later that week, while discreetly monitoring a secure communication channel she had established, Alara overheard a coded conversation between two high-ranking Sterling Global executives. Their hushed voices, laced with an urgency that transcended corporate decorum, spoke of the next phase and a rendezvous at the old docks, a critical meeting location just revealed. Alara felt a surge of adrenaline, a familiar thrill cutting through the weariness. The architect was finally within her grasp, or so she hoped. The chill of a late autumn night clung to the old docks, the air thick with the smell of brine and forgotten industry. Ilara, cloaked in shadow and an unassuming worker's jacket, watched from a derelict warehouse, her breath misting in the cold. Below, a small convoy of sleek black vehicles arrived, their headlights cutting through the gloom. Figures emerged, stern-faced and anonymous, forming a protective perimeter. Then, from the lead car, stepped a man whose presence seemed to draw all light and attention. He was not what Ilara expected, not the shadowy, reclusive figure she had envisioned, but a man of striking, almost charismatic appearance. His movements were fluid, his gaze sharp, assessing his surroundings with an unnerving calm. This was the architect. He exuded an aura of controlled power, his voice, when he finally spoke into a secure comms device, a low rumble that carried an undeniable authority. Ilara observed his meticulous efficiency, the way his subordinates reacted to his slightest gesture, understanding immediately why he had been so difficult to trace. He was a conductor, and his orchestra played a symphony of financial destruction. This wasn't just about money, it was about control, about reshaping the world through calculated chaos. As Ilara shifted her position for a better vantage point, a familiar silhouette detached itself from the architect's inner circle, moving with a subtle grace she knew intimately. Her heart lurched. It was Daniel. Daniel, her former mentor, the man who had taught her everything she knew about intelligence work, the one who had disappeared years ago after a mission gone sideways. The shock was visceral, a cold wave of disbelief washing over her. What was he doing here, allied with a financial terrorist? A torrent of memories flooded her mind. The rigorous training sessions, his patient guidance, the shared laughter over late-night debriefs, the quiet understanding that had bound them. Daniel had been more than a mentor. He had been a confidant, a friend, almost family. Seeing him now on the opposing side felt like a betrayal of the highest order, a knife twisting in an old wound. Their last conversation, a heated argument about the ethics of a particularly brutal operation, echoed in her ears. He had always been the more idealistic of the two, the one who believed in the inherent good of humanity, even when faced with its darkest manifestations. As their eyes met across the dimly lit dock, a flicker of recognition, fear, and something akin to sorrow crossed Daniel's face. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, and his eyes, once so warm, now held a haunted depth. He gave a fractional, almost imperceptible shake of his head, a gesture only she would understand, a silent warning. It was a message woven into the fabric of their shared past. Get out. You don't belong here. Ilara's resolve wavered. The mission, once a clear-cut pursuit of justice, now felt entangled in a web of personal history and agonizing moral ambiguities. Could she use Daniel, the man who had shaped her, to bring down the architect? The thought was a bitter pill, yet the images of the victims of the architect's terror flashed in her mind, steeling her resolve. She was a soldier, and a soldier followed orders. But the emotional cost was immense, a heavy weight pressing down on her spirit. Meanwhile, Julian Vance, back at Sterling Global, continued his relentless investigation into Dr. Evelyn Reed. The minor inconsistency he had found had festered in his mind, gnawing at him. He spent countless hours cross-referencing public records, university archives, and financial databases. He wasn't just looking for an anomaly anymore. He was looking for a ghost. He felt a growing certainty that the woman who had so effortlessly dominated their corporate world was not who she claimed to be. Her brilliance was too sharp, her past too pristine, her ascent too meteoric, a brief painful flashback to a time before the cold steel of the agency had hardened her. She and Daniel huddled over a map in a safe house, sharing a flask of cheap whiskey, debating the moral compass of their work. Sometimes, Daniel had said, his voice quiet, the hardest part isn't pulling the trigger, Ilara. It's living with who you become to do it. His words resonated now with a chilling new meaning. As the clandestine meeting dispersed, Ilara remained hidden, her gaze fixed on Daniel until he disappeared into the night. Later, back in her sterile apartment, a secure message appeared on her encrypted device. It was a series of seemingly random numbers and letters, But Alara recognized the pattern instantly. It was a cipher, one only she and Daniel knew. With trembling fingers, she decoded it. The message was brief, cryptic, and chilling. The architect is a pawn. The true game is elsewhere. Look for the phoenix. A deeper conspiracy. Her world, already fractured, threatened to shatter completely. Alara stared at the decoded message, the glowing text on her screen a stark contrast to the darkness consuming her thoughts. The architect is a pawn. The true game is elsewhere. Look for the phoenix. Daniel's cryptic warning reverberated through her mind, shattering her preconceived notions of the mission. She had been hunting a spider, only to discover it was merely a single strand in a much larger, more insidious web. The revelation sent a cold shiver down her spine. The architect, the man responsible for so much suffering, was being manipulated. This wasn't just about stopping a financial terrorist. It was about exposing a hidden, more powerful entity, pulling the strings from the shadows. Her mission had just become infinitely more complex and infinitely more dangerous. Her initial objective, the apprehension of the architect, now felt like a distraction, a carefully orchestrated misdirection. The true enemy, this phoenix, operated with such stealth and influence that they could control a figure as formidable as the architect. This shifted everything. Her focus had to broaden, her methods had to adapt. She was no longer just a hunter. She was an unraveler, tasked with exposing a deep-seated conspiracy that reached far beyond the immediate threat. The weight of this new understanding pressed down on her, a heavy mantle of responsibility. Just as the implications of Daniel's message began to fully sink in, a sharp knock echoed through her sterile apartment. Her heart leaped into her throat. She knew it wasn't official. Mossad never announced itself. Her hand instinctively went to the concealed weapon beneath her desk. A moment later, the door creaked open, revealing Julian Vance, his face grim, his eyes burning with a quiet fury. He held a thick file in his hand, its contents undoubtedly damning. "Dr. Reed," he began, his voice laced with an icy calm that was far more unnerving than any shout. "We need to talk, or rather, you need to explain." He stepped inside, not waiting for an invitation, and tossed the file onto her desk. The top sheet was a meticulously compiled dossier on Alara, not Evelyn Reed, detailing inconsistencies, financial discrepancies, and a timeline that simply didn't add up. He had done his homework, and he had done it well. The game was up. Alara knew evasion was futile. Julian wasn't just suspicious, he had proof. In a calculated gamble, she decided to reveal a partial truth, enough to pique his intellect and appeal to the moral compass she sensed beneath his corporate facade. "Julian," she said, her voice dropping to a low, earnest tone, "I am not who you think I am, but neither is the architect. There's something far larger at play here, something that threatens not just our firm, but the global economy and countless innocent lives." She watched his face carefully, searching for any flicker of understanding, any sign that he might listen. A long, tense silence hung in the air. Julian's gaze, initially accusatory, softened slightly, replaced by a flicker of intellectual curiosity. He was a man driven by logic and justice, even if his justice was often served in corporate boardrooms. "A larger game?" he finally murmured, his brow furrowing in thought. "Explain." Alara took a deep breath and began to weave a narrative, carefully omitting details that would compromise her agency, but painting a vivid picture of a hidden network, a puppet master manipulating the architect. She spoke of the Phoenix, framing it as a shadowy organization with immense power, capable of destabilizing nations through financial warfare. Julian listened intently, his initial anger slowly giving way to a grudging respect for her audacity and the sheer scale of the threat she described. He still didn't trust her completely, but the magnitude of the conspiracy she outlined was too compelling to ignore. "I can't fully trust you," Julian stated, his eyes piercing, "but I can't ignore this either. If what you say is true, then we have a mutual enemy." He paused, a new resolve hardening his features. "I'll help you, but on my terms. Absolute transparency on anything that impacts my firm, and I make the calls on any financial countermeasures." It was an uneasy alliance, forged in desperation, but an alliance nonetheless. Over the next few days, their partnership, though volatile, proved surprisingly effective. Julian's access to financial intelligence and his innate understanding of market manipulation were invaluable. They worked late into the nights, sifting through data, identifying shell corporations, and tracing the labyrinthine flow of illicit funds. Ilara found herself seeing glimpses of humanity in the architect through the transactions. Not a monster, but a man caught in a system, albeit a willing participant. It complicated her black and white view of the world, blurring the lines between victim and perpetrator. During one particularly close call, a suspicious audit of their joint research was initiated, clearly a move by the Phoenix to flush them out. Julian, without hesitation, fabricated a complex alibi, sacrificing a significant personal bonus and risking his reputation to protect Ilara's cover. It was a selfless act that deepened the nascent bond between them. Then, late one night, buried deep within a seemingly innocuous financial report, they found it. A detailed schematic for a massive, coordinated financial attack, designed to trigger a global market collapse. The timeline was horrifyingly clear. The attack was imminent, mere days away, its scale unprecedented and devastating. Ilara and Julian stared at the screen, the glowing numbers on the schematic a stark prophecy of global financial ruin. Their hearts pounded in a synchronized rhythm of dread and urgency. The meticulously planned attack, dubbed Project Chimera, was not merely a disruption. It was a systemic collapse designed to cripple economies and sow chaos on an unimaginable scale. They had mere days, perhaps even hours, to prevent a catastrophe that would reverberate across the world, shattering lives and trust. The weight of this revelation pressed down on them, a suffocating burden. The immediate challenge was not just stopping the attack, but discerning who among the shadows could be trusted. The architect, once a clear target, now appeared to be a pawn, albeit a dangerous one, in a much larger game. The Phoenix, the unseen entity Ilara had described to Julian, felt closer than ever, its tendrils reaching into every corner. Lines blurred between foe and potential ally, creating a treacherous landscape where every move was a gamble. Within the architect's inner circle, a palpable tension began to mount. He too sensed the tremors of internal dissent, the subtle shifts in loyalty, and the growing paranoia gnawed at his composure, making him more unpredictable and ruthless. His directives became sharper, his demands more absolute, creating a climate of fear that Ilara could almost taste. The window for her former mentor, Elias, to act was rapidly closing. Then, a coded message arrived, discreetly tucked into a seemingly mundane data packet Julian intercepted. It was from Elias, a desperate plea for a meeting, hinting at critical information that could expose the true orchestrator behind Project Chimera. But the location, an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city, screamed danger, a trap waiting to spring. Ilara felt a cold knot of fear tighten in her stomach. Protecting her cover meant avoiding such risks, but Elias was not just a source. He was a friend, a mentor who had shaped her. The emotional toll of the mission, already heavy, threatened to consume Ilara. The constant deception, the moral ambiguities, the gnawing fear of failure. It all pressed down on her, pushing her to her absolute limits. She found herself staring blankly into the reflection of Evelyn Reed, a stranger's face looking back, wondering if the real Ilara still existed beneath the layers of artifice. Julian, witnessing her struggle, found his own loyalty tested. A discreet offer landed on his desk, a position of immense power and wealth within a rival conglomerate, contingent upon his silence about Project Chimera and, more pointedly, his disengagement from Ilara. It was a golden parachute, an escape from the danger, a chance to rebuild his reputation without the shadow of a rogue agent. For a moment, the temptation was immense. He saw the path of least resistance, the allure of security. But then he looked at Ilara, at the unwavering resolve in her tired eyes, and knew he couldn't abandon her. Their shared nights of deciphering data, the risks they had taken together, the quiet trust that had formed between them, it solidified into an unbreakable bond. "He's trying to buy me off," Julian stated simply, pushing the lucrative offer across the table to Ilara. His voice was steady, his gaze unwavering. "It won't work." It was a moment of profound connection, a silent affirmation of their partnership, forged in the crucible of impending disaster. Together, they redoubled their efforts. Elias's message, decoded with Julian's expertise, led them to a forgotten financial ledger, buried deep in a defunct server. It wasn't just a list of transactions. It was a meticulously kept record of the Phoenix's funding network, revealing not only the true mastermind, but also their intricate web of global influence. The name that emerged from the shadows sent a chill down Alara's spine, a figure far more powerful and insidious than the architect, a titan of industry with seemingly untouchable connections. Just as they uncovered this critical piece of information, the first tremors of Project Chimera hit. Financial news channels flashed with alarming reports of sudden market volatility, unexplained crashes in specific sectors, and a ripple of panic spreading through global exchanges. The architect, emboldened by the initial success, had launched the preliminary phase of the attack. The world watched, unaware that this was just the beginning, a prelude to the full, devastating symphony of financial terror. The financial world, already reeling from the first tremors, now plunged into absolute chaos as the architect's full plan unfolded with terrifying precision. Stock markets around the globe buckled, currencies fluctuated wildly, and a wave of bankruptcies threatened to engulf established institutions. The carefully constructed edifice of global finance began to crumble, brick by economic brick, under the weight of the architect's relentless assault. Ilara and Julian watched the news feeds in horror, the digital numbers on their screens translating into real-world suffering and instability. They knew they had to act, and swiftly. Their risky move involved a coordinated counterattack, a desperate attempt to flood specific market sectors with false data, creating a digital smokescreen to disrupt the architect's automated algorithms. It was a gamble, exposing their digital fingerprints further, but it was their only chance to buy precious time. As Julian furiously coded, his fingers flying across the keyboard, Ilara worked to disseminate disinformation through their established, albeit now tenuous, corporate channels, sowing seeds of doubt about the integrity of the architect's initial data. Their audacious maneuver did not go unnoticed. The architect's security forces, a highly sophisticated network of digital and physical operatives, began to close in. The digital attacks on their secure servers intensified, a relentless barrage designed to pinpoint their location. Simultaneously, whispers reached Ilara through her remaining contacts. An elite team was mobilizing, their sole objective to neutralize the anomalies disrupting the architect's grand design. It became a high-stakes cat-and-mouse chase, with their lives hanging in the balance, every click and keystroke potentially revealing their position. The inevitable direct confrontation occurred not in a shadowy alley but across the cold, impersonal expanse of a secure video link. The architect's face, projected onto Ilara's monitor, was calm, almost serene, amidst the digital storm he had unleashed. He spoke not of power or greed, but of a twisted sense of justice, a radical reshaping of a corrupt world. He revealed a personal vendetta, a deep-seated grievance against the very financial systems he was now dismantling, systems that had, in his eyes, destroyed his family and legacy years ago. He saw himself not as a terrorist, but as a liberator, purging the world of its financial sins. Ilara listened, a chilling echo of her own past failures resonating within his words. She saw the parallel, a conviction, a deep-seated belief in a flawed system, leading to a path of destruction. She confronted her own ghosts, the moments when her unwavering faith in a cause had blinded her to the human cost. "You're not breaking the system," she countered, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "You're just building another one on the ashes, and it will be just as flawed, just as destructive." Meanwhile, Julian, hidden away in a compromised but still functional server farm, used his unparalleled financial expertise to disrupt the architect's operations from within. He couldn't stop the entire attack, but he could create bottlenecks, reroute funds, and introduce subtle, destabilizing errors into the architect's complex algorithms, acting as a digital saboteur. Just as a sliver of hope emerged, a devastating betrayal struck. Elias, her former mentor, the man who had risked everything to provide the critical intel, made a desperate plea over a scrambled line. He had been compromised, his location revealed, and a voice, cold and devoid of emotion, took over the line. It was not the architect, but the true mastermind, the titan of industry, who offered Alara a chilling ultimatum: surrender, or Elias would pay the ultimate price. Alara faced a moral dilemma that could compromise the entire mission, a choice between saving a friend and apprehending an even greater evil. Before she could respond, the connection severed. A moment later, the server farm's alarms blared. Alara was cornered, the digital security collapsing around her. On her monitor, a final message flashed, accompanied by a picture, a deep-cover Mossad file, her true identity exposed. The architect, with a chilling smile, held the crucial piece of evidence that could not only expose her but destroy everything she had worked for. Alara's world shattered into 1,000 digital fragments as her true identity glared back from the screen. The executive persona, Dr. Evelyn Reed, meticulously constructed and painstakingly maintained, crumbled around her, leaving only the raw, exposed agent beneath. There was no time for despair, only instinct. The blaring alarms were no longer a distant threat but a deafening reality, signaling the immediate collapse of her sanctuary. She moved with a practiced predatory grace, her tailored suit now a hindrance rather than a disguise. Footsteps pounded in the corridor, heavy and urgent, announcing the arrival of the architect's enforcers. These were not corporate drones but hardened operatives, their faces grim, their movements precise. The first two burst through the door, weapons raised, but Alara was already a blur of motion. Years of Mossad training took over, transforming her from a sophisticated executive into a lethal force. A swift kick to the knee of the lead enforcer sent him sprawling, his weapon clattering uselessly across the polished floor. The second met a brutal elbow strike to the throat, his eyes wide with surprise before he crumpled. It was a whirlwind of calculated violence, each move economical, designed for maximum impact. She disarmed a third, using his own momentum against him, twisting his arm into an agonizing lock before slamming him against the wall. The air filled with grunts of pain and the metallic tang of fear. Julian, despite the searing pain from the shrapnel wounds he sustained from the earlier explosion at the server farm, understood the gravity of the moment. He saw Alara, a whirlwind of controlled fury, holding off their attackers, but knew it was a losing battle against overwhelming numbers. With a desperate surge of adrenaline, he forced himself to the central console. His fingers, though trembling, danced across the keyboard. He initiated a system-wide overload, a digital scream designed to attract every last security detail in the complex to their current location. Sirens wailed, lights flickered erratically, and a cacophony of alarms erupted, creating a perfect chaotic diversion. "Go!" he rasped, his voice raw, as another wave of enforcers swarmed the corridor. "I'll buy you time." Alara hesitated for a fraction of a second, her heart tearing at the thought of leaving him, but the urgency in his eyes, the sheer self-sacrifice, propelled her forward. She knew this was his final heroic act. The architect, her nemesis, would be beyond enraged. He would unleash every resource, every dark corner of his vast network to hunt them down. She could almost feel his cold fury, a palpable presence closing in. As she navigated the labyrinthine corridors, Alara shed the last vestiges of Dr. Evelyn Reed. The high heels were kicked off, her blazer discarded as she moved through ventilation shafts and maintenance tunnels, her Mossad training a lifeline. Every shadow was a potential ambush, every distant sound a lurking threat. She used her intimate knowledge of the architect's network, gleaned from months of painstaking infiltration, against him. She knew the blind spots in his surveillance, the forgotten access points, the weaknesses in his seemingly impenetrable fortress. She was no longer infiltrating, she was escaping and planning her counterattack. Reaching a secure, prearranged dead drop, Alara activated a satellite phone, her fingers flying across the keypad. Her voice, though strained, was firm as she delivered a desperate plea to her superiors. "Operation Nightingale is compromised. My cover is blown. Julian Vance? He's made the ultimate sacrifice. I need immediate extraction and support. The architect is not the primary threat. Elias, he was right. There's someone far bigger pulling the strings. The response was swift, grim, and utterly shocking. The voice on the other end, usually calm and composed, was laced with an uncharacteristic tremor. The true mastermind, the one pulling the architect's strings, was not some shadowy figure in a distant land, but a titan of industry with deep political connections, a figure thought to be beyond reproach, a pillar of the global financial community. This revelation sent a cold shiver down Ilara's spine, far more chilling than any physical threat. The enemy was not just powerful, it was untouchable, woven into the very fabric of the system they sought to protect. A wave of profound loss washed over Ilara, for Elias, for Julian, for the innocents she had sacrificed. Their deaths, their betrayals, fueled a cold, burning resolve within her. This wasn't just about justice anymore. It was about honoring their memory, about exposing the rot at the core. She knew what she had to do. With the last of her intel, Ilara formulated a desperate, audacious plan. It was a long shot, a gamble with her life and the fate of the global economy, but it was the only way. The next day, as the global financial markets teetered on the brink of collapse, Ilara, battered but unbowed, walked into the packed press conference, a place where the true mastermind was about to deliver a calming, deceptive speech to the world. Her eyes, filled with a steely resolve, locked onto his, a silent declaration of war. She was there to expose him, to tear down his empire, no matter the cost. The grand ballroom of the World Economic Forum buzzed with an artificial calm, a thin veneer over the global panic that gnawed at the edges of civilization. Cameras flashed, reporters' pens scratched furiously, and the air crackled with anticipation. On the podium, Arthur Sterling, the titan of industry, exuded an aura of unshakable confidence, his voice a soothing balm, promising stability amidst the financial storm. He was a master manipulator, his words carefully chosen to deflect suspicion, to reassure the masses while his hidden machinations continued to unravel the world. But in the back, amidst the throng of journalists and security, stood Ilara. Her presence was a stark contrast to the polished environment. Her clothes were simple, her hair pulled back, but her eyes, deep and unwavering, held the fire of 1,000 suns. She carried no weapon, only a small, unassuming data chip clutched tightly in her hand, a digital sword ready to sever the threads of Sterling's deception. As Sterling began to speak, his voice resonating with false sincerity, Ilara moved. Each step was deliberate, a testament to months of pain, sacrifice, and relentless pursuit. She bypassed security with practiced ease, her Mossad training allowing her to become a ghost in plain sight. Reaching the edge of the stage, Ilara raised her hand, her voice, though quiet, carrying an undeniable authority that cut through the murmuring crowd. "Mr. Sterling," she stated, her words echoing through the suddenly silent hall, "perhaps you'd like to explain the true nature of your stabilization efforts." Before the stunned security could react, she inserted the data chip into a nearby media console, overriding the official presentation. Images and financial data, meticulously compiled by Elias, refined by Julian, and stolen from the heart of the architect's network, flashed across the massive screens behind Sterling. They were irrefutable proofs: shell corporations, illicit transactions, encrypted communications detailing the systematic destabilization of economies, all leading back to Sterling. The facade shattered, Sterling's composure crumbled, his face paling as the truth, undeniable and damning, illuminated the room. The architect, cornered and exposed by Ilara's earlier actions, had been apprehended in a dramatic international raid just hours before, his confession obtained under duress, solidifying the evidence against Sterling. The news, though not yet public, would soon break, painting a grim picture of a man driven by a twisted ideology of chaos for profit. The architect, a broken figure, would face the full weight of international justice. His reign of terror definitively ended, a dramatic and tragic conclusion to a life consumed by destructive ambition. Weeks later, the dust began to settle. Julian Vance, miraculously recovering from his injuries, found himself a reluctant hero. His insights had been invaluable, his sacrifice pivotal, He chose to leave the cutthroat world of high finance, instead channeling his vast intellect and newfound moral compass into humanitarian efforts, using his expertise to rebuild the very economies Sterling had sought to destroy. His life, irrevocably altered, was now dedicated to a different kind of wealth, one measured in resilience and recovery. Ilara watched the news reports from a quiet, anonymous cafe, a cup of lukewarm coffee clutched in her hands. The emotional scars of the mission ran deep, etched into her soul. She saw the faces of Elias and Julian in her mind's eye, their sacrifices a constant, heavy reminder of the cost of justice. Yet there was also a profound sense of purpose, a quiet satisfaction that their deaths had not been in vain. She had walked through fire, blurred the lines of morality, and emerged with a clearer understanding of the world's intricate shade of gray. A small memorial stood on a windswept hill overlooking the city. It bore no names, only a simple inscription. For those who fought in the shadows, that light might prevail. Ilara visited it often, a silent tribute to her fallen comrades, to the countless innocent lives lost, and to the unwavering spirit of those who dared to stand against the darkness. Her future was uncertain, the path of a Mossad agent rarely linear, but as she gazed at the horizon, a quiet resolve settled within her. The fight for a truly just world, she knew, was an endless one, a battle fought in echoes and whispers, but a battle she was eternally ready to join. Her redemption was not in forgetting, but in continuing the fight, one shadow at a time.